everyone, welcome down the Hobby Hole, a weekly podcast about hobbies, interests, and hyperfixations, sometimes our own, and sometimes discovering new ones with guests. I am your host, Daniel Rustage. Sorry. I was reading a script for those that weren't clear. My name is Shwabadi, aka Mark, aka professional musician, X-Reaction channel, and hobbyist of many different things. And with me is my best friend and co-host, Daniel Rustage.
Oh, hell yeah. This was just an elaborate ruse to get you to call me your best friend.
Yeah.
That's why I got you to do the intro this time.
You've never had it on record before.
I've never had it on record before.
That's not true. That's not true. That can't be true.
I don't know. I don't know if there's recorded evidence of it. I would love someone to go through the archives of our entire documented online friendship to see if it's on record you calling me your best friend, because it is now, and now I can show this to people if anyone ever doubts the validity of that. I also wanted to just check. I did hit start recording and not start streaming for a second.
Oh my God.
We just went live. One day I'm going to do that, and it'll be incredible. This episode
that has happened before to people.
Oh,
Cam's done it. Cam Steady.
Yeah.
And someone else I can't remember.
Does Cam Steady have a Twitch audience?
Enough people to show up to see him doing a fucking ad read for something.
Wait, he didn't notice?
He didn't notice for like a while, and then he went to OBS, and obviously it has the chat, and he was like, "Am I live?" There's a clip of it somewhere. It's hilarious.
Full like to the camera ad read.
Yeah.
I imagine with like multiple takes as well. Like he couldn't have done it in one take. Like he probably has. I'd love it if he was doing an ad read for something that he didn't give a shit about. And so midway through he's like, and this is why we love this brand. Fuck, this sucks. And
Fuck, I can't believe I have to read this shit.
I would never use this actually, but they're paying me good money.
Just goes on a long monologue about how shit it is.
This is the worst earbuds I've ever listened out of.
I feel completely fraudulent reading this.
But I have to do it. I have to put money on the table.
I would leave a 1-star review if I could, but
all my videos are demonetized because I say fuck all the time in them. This episode is about card games. Card games, experiences with this. We're going to break it down into two sections. The first half is going to be about playing card games that we like to play, and all of that good stuff. And the second half will be about making card games, because we have made a card game and we are making another, and we're very excited to talk about it and our process with that. But we'll start with card games. We'll probably do some future episodes on these specific card games in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially the first one, which I think is Magic the Gathering. It's sort of the main one that we enjoy playing. And
it's the one I've made the most money to.
It is. That's true. That is true.
I do just think it's like the best card game.
It's the OG.
Like if you look at all of like the different things that people like about card games, I think Magic the Gathering does each of them to a level that no other card game has, like, consistently.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it is the most popular.
Yeah. Yeah.
By some margin.
Well, yeah. I think, yeah, right? I don't know the statistics.
I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Had a resurgence because it came back online with like
yeah.
I can't remember what the online version's called.
There's more than one.
Something Duelist.
Ultimate Duelist.
But it's free.
Yeah.
Master Duelist.
Right? Duelist. But I think Pokemon is also very popular, but it's like
Pokemon's
most people
popular,
play Pokemon to collect it as opposed to actually play it. Which thing. But I'll talk about how we got into Magic the Gathering, because I was going to say we're quite recent Magic the Gathering players, but actually we're not.
That's not true anymore.
No, it's not true anymore. We got into Magic the Gathering around Armonket.
Yeah.
What is that, 2016?
2017, I think.
2016, which is like now...
Well, 2017. Amonkhet was 2017, because I got in very slightly later than you. I started playing in Hour of Devastation, which was the set that came out after Amonkhet, and it came out like 6 months later in 2018. So, there you go.
Oh, is that true? Okay.
There's a timeline.
Right. There's the timeline. So that's like over 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But I started playing because I was...
Sorry, somebody's going to fact check me in the comments. I'm going to be completely wrong.
I started playing because I was guesting at QCon, shout out QCon, And one thing that I like to do when I guest at conventions is also just help out. So I was helping set up the card game area, and I noticed that a lot of people were opening booster packs of Magic the Gathering, taking out one card and then throwing the rest away. And I was like, this is wasteful. This is unforgivable. So I rooted through the rubbish and pulled out all of these common cards. And I was like, I've got to learn how to play this. And the staff member at the time who was hosting the whole thing taught me how to play Magic. And I got really into it. And I made a little deck out of all the cards that I fished out of the rubbish. And I took that home, and then I just sort of sunk down the hobby hole of Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
I now know why they were throwing all those cards away. Is because they're fucking useless.
Yeah, useless and worth like a penny each.
And when you've played enough Magic the Gathering, you do not want thousands of common Magic the Gathering cards flooding up all of your household orifices.
Yeah.
What are they? Cupboards, that's it. I forgot.
Your household orifices. Oh yes, cupboards. I feel like we've all got to that point though. If you've played Magic the Gathering for more than like 3 years, then you've got to a point where you're like, oh, I have like a crate just stacked full of common cards.
Yes.
Why do I keep these? I need to get rid of them.
Yes. Okay. Magic the Gathering, for those who don't know, I feel like this is a really difficult podcast because it's half for people, we're trying to introduce people to the hobby, and it's also half for people who already know the hobby and they want to hear our opinions on said hobby. But just briefly, for people who don't know what Magic the Gathering is, or what sort of trading card games are in general, Magic the Gathering is a game where you summon creatures and you cast spells, tapping resources from land to reduce your opponent's life force to 0, life points to 0. I think that's a sort of fair summation. It's been around since 1993. It's got many new editions coming out, all set in different planes and magical places in the multiverse, with elves and dwarves and dragons and Eldrazi and planeswalkers and
robots
and
like,
and ninjas
and everything that's ever existed, essentially.
And it is a lot of fun. And it's sort of the primogeniture, if that's the right word, for...
Progenitor.
Yeah, that's it. For other card games. Like, most other card games are based on the format that Magic the Gathering created, including Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is why I Freudian slipped it. Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's sort of... I don't know the exact dates for Yu-Gi-Oh!, but...
1999.
And I might be wrong on this, but I think... If I remember correctly, in some of the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Master books, they were actually playing Magic the Gathering until it turned into, like, someone's going to have to fact check me on this, but I read it in a Reddit comment somewhere, that OG Yu-Gi-Oh! When they played card games, it was a variant of Magic the Gathering. It was based on Magic the Gathering, and then he produced his own card game based on that, which now has its own rules and its whole system and stuff. And I think a lot of us played Yu-Gi-Oh! As kids, and we were really into it as kids. But like as we got older, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has not been as fun or engaging. It's very much suffered from really big, complicated text box with really tiny text, like crazy power creep, and just like a not really fun game state where if you were to play it in a sort of, I guess, more competitive angle, that people just win in like a singular turn.
It's absurd. I just, any time that I've looked at, played, or even thought about Yu-Gi-Oh! In the last like 15 years, I've been like, that sounds miserable.
And at least
sound fun.
With Magic the Gathering, there are like vintage formats of Magic the Gathering where yes, you can win turn 2, turn 3, and it's like hyper competitive. But I feel like Magic the Gathering, for as a lot of people complain, still has quite a healthy standard environment, as well as lots of other casual formats that are really fun to play, including the most popular format at the moment, which is Commander, and also my favorite format, which is Draft, or anything like that. What is your favorite format?
My favorite format, I really like the limited formats like Draft, like when you go to a pre-release and they give you like a couple of packs and you make a deck out of these sealed packs, stuff like that. I love deck building with like constrictions, because I'm not that good at deck building normally. But limited formats, I can build a deck. But yeah, Commander, is incredible. I love Commander so much.
Yes.
Fucking awful at building Commander decks. But if you give me a Commander deck and I just pilot it, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I do love that there's so many different formats of Magic that you can play that are all so well supported. You know what I mean? Because there's a bunch of different formats with different card games, but there's usually just one that people actually play.
Yeah.
But with
100%.
Magic, there's like 5.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that, like, on the topic of you not being able to build decks, me and Mark sort of have this dichotomy where I think he's a lot better than me at playing card games, but I'm a lot better at making decks and I don't know, just like constructing card games, I guess. And like the ideal scenario is I make a Commander deck and then Mark plays it. And then it will be unstoppable. We're an unstoppable team.
if we just team up and we can take the regionals, we go to the national final.
We'll go to the Champions League of Magic the Gathering. We'll go to the World Cup.
It would just be like you're like my coach. Like you build the deck and you're like feeding me information about it while I'm playing.
I'm not even that good at building decks, and you're not. Like
I'm not that good at playing either, no.
But just in comparison to each other.
Yeah.
We should explain. Commander is a format where you pick one card in Magic the Gathering and you build your deck around them, and that card is always available. And every card in your deck you can only have one copy of, and you've got 40 life, so the games go on for longer, and they could be more random and intense, and more often than not it's a multiplayer format, and people really enjoy that aspect. I think if we're going to talk about Magic the Gathering for a little bit, do you want to talk about what some of your favorite commanders are? You know, that you played or off the top of your head.
I mean, I always like I'm a simple guy, right? When it comes to like commander and stuff like that, I like commanders that either have a theme that's like, you know, there's a story in the deck where it's like what am I thinking of? Gosh. Just like a clear, obvious theme.
Yeah.
There's a I had it on my desk.
I think that's sort of what Magic the Gathering does.
There's a rat commander.
Yes.
There's a rat commander that makes all of your rats that you control have toxic, which means they deal poison counters. I just love the idea that you have a deck full of rats and you bring your commander out and they just all turn into like a plague.
Yeah.
It's just like the Black Plague. Then you're just sending it at people.
I do think that's what Magic the Gathering does really well, is it's really good at mixing mechanics and themes together so that you can create decks based around like you can make a zombie deck and it feels like a zombie deck because you're bringing stuff back from the graveyard. You can make a goblin deck and it feels like a goblin deck because you're having lots of little guys. And I really, really love that. So some of my personal favorite commanders, the one that has annoyed everybody that I've played against is Krenko. The one that when you tap him, he doubles the amount of goblins you control. I really loved him because you're able to build quite a good Krenko deck on like a budget. Like I made a Krenko commander deck for like $10-$20, and it just annihilated people who had way more expensive decks than me. I remember being at NPC one year and playing against this guy who had he was absolutely destroying me and wiping me because with his like $300 commander deck. I was on like single digit life, and then I just had a turn where I just created like 40 goblins and then played a card that let me sacrifice all my goblins to just fling them all at my opponent and kill him in one move and come
so
back.
Funny.
And it's a lot of fun. I've been experimenting with lots of fun commanders. There's I don't know what she's called, but last time we were playing Commander, there's a Sphinx that like lets you cast odd mannered spell cards from the top of your deck for free, and it's really fun because it creates that like design motif of all of the cards in my deck have to be odd mana values, but then it lets you play these incredibly overpowered spells essentially for free if you manage to attack with it, and that could be a lot of fun.
I just really like playing with theming and building decks after themes, which is why I think I'm not as good a deck builder. It's because I don't think enough about the mechanics and how they work together.
Sometimes the frustrating thing will be like the most powerful version of a deck isn't thematically the best one. It's like tribal themes. It's like the most powerful version of this pirate deck isn't actually playing that many pirates. It's playing unblockable changelings, you know? And it's like, I don't really like this. This isn't a pirate deck anymore.
Yeah, I had the same issue. I think it was when I was trying to build a dinosaur deck, but that was a modern dinosaur deck, not like a commander. And it was like the most powerful thing isn't just to get like some really strong dinosaurs and get cards that get you know, that ramp into them or whatever. It's actually to get like 2 really strong dinosaurs and then just get a bunch of spells that fetch them out the deck.
Yes.
And I'm like, I want like
an army of dinosaurs.
Yeah. No, it's like I play a spell that pulls Galta out of my deck.
Yeah. I always think that's like what's always headbutting itself with like trading card games, collectible card games, is that there will always be a card that's better than the card that you want to play. And it's like, if you want to play at a sort of semi-competitive level, it's silly not to choose the better card every time. But that's part of the reason why I like to set little limitations, and I created my own little they're like budget peasant decks. I made like 20 of them. They are only commons and uncommons in Magic the Gathering, and then each deck has a budget of $10. Like the cards cannot be more than $1 each. Like they are all really, really cheap.
Those are really fun decks as well.
Yeah,
because they have a lot of really fun mechanics.
They all are based off a different theme. So it's like, can I make the best dinosaur deck only using common and uncommon dinosaurs that are budget, and that, you know, brings up these really interesting like mechanics and game states and stuff that you wouldn't usually do, because if you're just playing with the best cards, you'd be like, I just have this fucking mythic dinosaur. That's and that's a lot of fun. And also, they're really good because I have a lot of friends that enjoy playing Magic the Gathering but don't own Magic the Gathering decks or can invest financially into it. So I can bring a handful of those and you could just play with them. And I think that in itself is a lot of fun.
At the risk of this becoming the Magic the Gathering episode.
Yes, let's move on.
I wanted to talk to you about Pokemon TCG briefly.
Yes.
Just on the point of like theming, because I've started getting into Pokemon TCG and I'm not very good at it. And Pokemon, I originally didn't get back into Pokemon because I played it, you know, in the early 2000s. I played the Game Boy version and stuff like that, the really early Pokemon TCG. I didn't get back into it because I thought it was suffering the same thing as Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it had a lot of that like crazy power scaling and stuff. And there are a lot of really powerful cards now that didn't exist, but I think that Pokemon TCG has done it in a way where you can still kind of just build decks around fun themes. You can get away with that kind of thing and use fun mechanics that aren't just gigantic Charizard EX swinging for 280 damage each turn. It's like they've balanced it reasonably well in my opinion, so it's still actually really fun. So I've just like bought a super cheap deck that I made online, and I'm going to actually go to like a store and play.
Let me know how that experience goes, because I feel like with Pokemon, I think the majority of people who open Pokemon cards aren't actually playing, they're just collecting. They're like collectors. And I found that with Pokemon as an actual game, it's really difficult to come back when you're behind, right? Yeah, no,
like, I have found similar.
Yeah, like it in other card games, and we'll talk about other ones later, but also just for Magic the Gathering, you can be behind, low on life or whatever, but you can do stuff to get back into the game and like rebalance the board position stuff, whatever. Yeah. But with Pokemon, it feels so much harder because it's more of like an investment. You put a card down and you evolve it and then you blah, 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 and you have the stuff on the bench and whatever. But I found that I had the most fun when there's a format called like the Gym Leaders Challenge, where you have all the Pokemon are one typing, and it's like Singleton like Commander, where you can only have one of each in the deck. And I can't remember the rest of the rules, but it's done in a way where and you can't use, I think they call them trophy cards, like all of the ones that are like EX, or the ones that give you extra shit when you beat them because they're more powerful. Those cards are just strictly not usable. So it's a more like lower power format. And I found that those games seem to be when I played a little bit more enjoyable. And you can
I played a couple of games with that where I made like this it was like a dark type bird themed deck, and again, theming, I'm all for it. You tell me I can make a deck that's just, it's all birds that are dark type, incredible. I had so much fun. I do enjoy that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I respect Pokemon as well, because it does play at least a little bit differently to Magic the Gathering, because I've tried a lot of card games now as a man who has hobbies, and I found that a lot of newer card games that are coming out are just Magic the Gathering but slightly different.
Yes,
I think one of the key examples of that, which I played, was the One Piece card game, which is, I mean, you play it, they're different, right? It isn't just Magic the Gathering, but the idea is you play cards, you tap those cards to attack with them, to do X, to do Y. You get a resource, which is they have Don, which is the equivalent of land, and the basis is the same as Magic. You have a resource you tap to play cards that you tap to attack, right? Which is the same as Magic, but then they have their own spin. The One Piece one is that you can put your lands on cards to make them stronger, and there's a few other mechanics with it which are fun. It does the Yu-Gi-Oh thing where you can attack creatures, but only creatures that are tapped. So it does have some interesting stuff there, but it's the same basis of Magic the Gathering. And a lot of card games are that, because that basis is good, you know. Spending resource, play cards, attack. That's a good basis. But the one card game that I recently got really into, and that I've been playing a lot, that doesn't really use that basis at all, and is what really drew me to it, is Flesh and Blood.
Yeah.
We talk about Flesh and Blood. We love Flesh and Blood. So Flesh and Blood feels more like you're playing a fighting game. But
it is the first card game I've played since Magic the Gathering that doesn't feel like it's another card game.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. Like, even like, I actually made a list of all the card games that I have played.
Yeah.
And it is funny looking through it that you're just like, oh, you can trace each one of them back to, you know,
which isn't bad. Like, you can make a fun
Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon.
Yeah.
But, one of those three.
Yeah.
But they're still fun. But yeah, it's like most of the time if I'm playing a card game and I'm like, oh, this feels like another card game, I'd rather play that other card game.
Yeah, you'd rather just play Magic the Gathering. That's what I found when playing
Flesh
the
and Blood
One Piece.
It's really fresh.
Yeah, and it's made by a small studio in New Zealand. I mean, I guess they're a bigger studio now. And it's not based off an existing property. I think another one, Disney Lorcana, is just like Magic the Gathering, but it's slightly different. You're not attacking, you're questing. But it's still, you're tapping creatures, you got resources, whatever. With Flesh and Blood, as I said before, it plays like a fighting game. You have a character, they have an ability, and you have an equipment. And the cards in your hand can be used both as a resource and as an attack and as like a defense. And you draw at the end of your turn, and that's the important thing. And the whole idea is you sending your attacks towards your opponent, and then they block with whatever cards that they want to block, or they let things through. It's that trade-off, and it means because you draw at the end of your turn, when it goes back to your opponent's turn, whatever cards they use to block, they will not have to use to attack with on their turn. Yeah. So it's a real balancing act of like, how much am I willing to risk to give up to be able to do what I want to do? It has a lot of nuance. There's a thing called the Arsenal where you could put a card into the Arsenal to save for later. So there's a lot of strategizing and planning into that. But the game starts strong. There's no, like, with Magic and a lot of other card games, the first 3 or 4 turns is really just like setting up. You're playing your land, you're playing your small creatures to play your big creatures. But with Flesh and Blood, you start at your peak. You've begun, and the game has already started. You're already fighting.
It's great. There's no like ramp up to a peak. Yeah. I mean, you say that, but like you said, there's a lot of variety. So there's some decks, like a couple of decks that I've built. The whole point of them is that they get slowly stronger because they build up resources. Yeah. So most of my decks start out pretty weak and they're just getting battered by the other person. But as the game goes on, they get stronger and stronger as they build up resources, and then they just swing.
I'm actually surprised at the amount of deck variety that you can get out of, honestly, quite a simple idea.
When I first started playing it with you, when you showed it to me, because we were in Greece at the time on holiday, and we just played like 12 of these decks. I was playing, I was like, this is really fun. This doesn't feel like it could have that much depth to it, but you play more different types of characters, like the different heroes with the different weapons, and you're like, okay, there's a lot to this. Like, when I first played it, I didn't understand how this game could have booster packs.
Like,
you know what I mean? I was like, like, how do you have enough cards to make it worth getting boosters and stuff like that? But no, there's so much to it.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and like, cards will have different classes, and so they share cards. The heroes have different classes, and they'll share cards based on those classes, and so there is a lot of variety in what you can do with it, and I'm just excited to play more and like really get into it. I think the only flaw I could think Flesh and Blood has is because it's newer and it's not tied to a property. Some local, like it's in some areas you just won't have people that play it, and it's really it doesn't really have like a good alternative like online. Like there are unofficial ways to play it online, but there's nothing like Magic the Gathering Arena or anything like that. So it's difficult to like try it out unless you're playing with friends. But if you are playing it with friends, it's so much fun. And the games are just, they're always exciting. They're always quick, they're always exciting, and they're always a lot of fun. And I don't really think I've definitely had Magic the Gathering games where I felt like, this was a bad game, there's nothing I could do. I very rarely have Flesh and Blood games where I'm like, this was just shit from the start. Like they've managed to make a card game that's almost always fun. And shout out Flesh and Blood. This is my PSA.
Shout out Flesh and Blood.
Shout out Flesh
and Blood. This is our advertisement. Yes. This is our unpaid advertisement. Please, Flesh and Blood, sponsor Hobby Hole.
Yeah, please. We need a sponsor.
We need a sponsor. I want it to be Flesh and Blood.
Yeah,
I won't
right
accept
now.
any other sponsorships. Yeah. That's not true. I'm going to name a couple card games that we haven't named before we move on to the next section. Just so that people aren't commenting. You didn't mention my favorite card game. Hearthstone. You know, one of the big ones for digital versions of cards. Hearthstone, Inscription, if we're talking like digital stuff. Fun. Inscription, super fun. Obviously, it's built on a
any
roguelike
sort of
game.
single-player roguelike card game just tickles my brain in a really fun way.
Yeah.
Like Wild Frost.
Wild
Frost, Inscription, Slay the Spire. Those are probably like the big three.
Yeah. I've got to try Slay the Spire and Wild Frost. I haven't yet. Gwent.
Yes, Gwent.
Yeah, that standalone game because it was so much fun.
Yeah, Gwent's a lot of fun.
I really like that as well. I played way more Gwent than I did Witcher. I still haven't finished Witcher because I got carried away. Hearthstone, it really is just like anyone that's played Hearthstone then plays Magic because they're like, I get it. Like, Hearthstone is just completely Magic the Gathering, but like simplified to work like better in digital format. One Piece TCG we've already talked about. Buddy Fight. Have you ever heard of Buddy Fight?
I don't think I have. Is it good?
My ex was really into it. I didn't get it. When we were playing, I played like a lot of it. I never really got it. It just felt like Yu-Gi-Oh, but like I didn't necessarily understand what was going on. Maybe I was probably just taught badly. Yeah. But Buddy Fight, it had an anime. I knew that, and the card game was just I didn't get it.
I played. Was it Duel Master? It was another one that was like a sort of Yu-Gi-Oh ripoff, like Duel something. Maybe it's Duel Masters. I don't know what it is.
Duel Masters sounds familiar.
Yeah. But I played a little bit of that. I tried a lot of card games when I was younger.
Here's one I've never played, but every time I look at the card art, it looks mental. Is Card Fight Vanguard?
Okay, yeah, that's what I've definitely heard of, and I've never played it.
The art, I always see like it online. Yeah. The art is gorgeous. All the cards look gorgeous, and then you look at the rules box, and it's just. First of all the text is tiny because there's so much inside of this tiny rules box, and they use like for keywords. Like evergreen keywords across different things, they'll use different symbols. So it's a text box just full of these weird symbols in all different colors, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Usually you would have symbols to make it so you don't have to have as much text, but when you still have a lot of text, that feels like a problem.
No, because their symbols is just like, it'll be a word with a big border around it.
Oh, I see.
It's not even like a small symbol.
Well, I think that's because it's a Japanese card game, and usually that would probably be a singular character in Japanese, so it probably looks a lot better.
Yeah. No, for sure. Okay. And I want to mention this one because I want to know if anybody else except for me in the fucking world has played this. It's called Dinosaur King.
I've seen it.
It is a game where you got these cards that had dinosaurs on them, and they had like barcodes on the side.
What?
And you put the cards into an arcade machine.
Yeah, I've seen the arcade machine.
And then the dinosaur on the card would be in the game, and you would use move cards as well to make your dinosaurs do moves.
I've seen tons of those in Japan.
Yeah,
it's still popping in Japan.
I haven't. Is it really?
It must be.
I haven't seen them since I went to fucking Butlins camping with my parents in like 2007.
Yeah,
or something like that. Like when I was really young.
I went to Butlins.
You got the packs of the cards, huh?
I also went to Butlins when I was like 7, but I started worshipping a seagull when I was there, And
different experiences.
Instead of doing anything else, every day I would leave the house and the seagull would always be perching on top of a big pole, and I would walk up and I'd genuinely get on my knees and pray to it every day. And I don't know why. And it's just reignited this memory in me. Anyway, so do you have any other card games?
Anyway, so leave a comment if you played Dinosaur King.
I've seen it. I've definitely seen it.
I really want to play it again just for that hit of nostalgia. But I remember because you'd like, I think it was the same arcade machine that you would play it on. You'd put the credits in, you'd pay for it, and then it would print out cards as if you'd opened a booster. Like it would print out random cards for you, and so you could collect them like that. But this is like childhood memory, so I don't know if I'm misremembering how this works, but I remember it being so fucking cool. You put the card in, the creature would appear, then you put another card in, it does the move that's on the card, and it's like,
yeah. Oh, I mean, I think they have I think Dinosaur Fight is one of many games like that in Japan, like if I can remember. I think there's a Pokemon one that's like that. I might be wrong.
Wow.
I might be wrong, but there's definitely more than one.
I've seen the machines. When I was in Japan, there was a machine I saw people using that they were putting cards, like there's a big screen and you put the cards on the screen and it like scans them like that. But it was like Anime Girls.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the game was.
I mean, there's some mental arcade machines in Japan.
Yeah, the arcades in Japan are crazy.
They're so cool.
They are not for me. I will say that. They are not for me. It's lots of like
tons of rhythm games.
Obviously, there's all the crane games they have in, so many rhythm games. The rhythm games are crazy.
Oh, I love it. My is my favorite.
All the arcade games look like games that you have to commit weeks of your life to.
Yeah. They're like the equivalent of just like having your own game. You have a card that keeps all your stats and your data on it. You put it in and you just play. And they're like proper like gacha games, but arcade games as well. They're insane.
Let's talk
about
game design.
Yes.
Designing card games.
We have a game called the Devil's Luck card game.
It's mostly your game.
It's mostly my game, but you came up with some of the card ideas.
Some card ideas I come up with. And a lot of my card ideas I come up with are just mental, and you like trim them down until they're actually reasonable.
Yeah. You are one of the main playtesters and card idea guy in the Rustage card game production facility. So if you don't know, I have a card game called The Devil's Luck. It's based off my One Piece D&D series. It is still available for purchase at the moment, as well as the expansion pack on my fourth wall. And you just look up The Devil's Luck card game, and it will come up. I think it's the first link.
Yeah.
And
highly recommended. I know I'm saying like, I've helped design or whatever. I don't like get paid for it. I just do it for fun. I'd help it because it's a fucking fun thing to help with. So there's no like cut for me here if I say this. It's genuinely one of the best 2-player games I've ever played. Like if you're talking about like 2-player board game face-to-face experience, because there's a lot of them and a lot of them are very good. Devil's Luck is genuinely one of my favorites. It can be very quick, but there's a lot of depth to it. It's not completely so skill-based and optimizable that like if someone's better than you, you just lose every time. It's not, because there's there's a lot of there's aspects of luck and there's aspects of skill, and it's great.
The idea is I wanted to make a card game that there's not a lot of I've discovered more now, but like at the time I didn't feel like there was a lot of card games that were just 2-player card games that you just had one deck that you could, and that was it. All you needed was a deck, and you could just play a game, and it's quick and it's fun, and it wasn't just a game. Because there's plenty of games like that where you have a regular pack of 52 cards, like Go Fish or whatever. And then there's plenty of trading card games where you build up a collection of cards and you build a deck, and it's so much more of an investment. I just wanted a card game that you play, and it's just a pack of cards. And the closest thing that I could think of was like Uno, but Uno, to be honest, is not really a good game for 2 players.
No.
And then there's a lot of good 2-player board games out there, but they're full board games with pieces and things like that. And the base idea of this card game, and I've talked about this a bit before when we talked in the video game episode, is it was a game that we wanted to have the players inside our D&D universe play, sort of like how in the Witcher universe they play Gwent. And Gwent, all the cards in Gwent are based off the characters in Witcher, but the Witcher characters also play them, so they play with themselves. And
Okay.
But I really like that conceptually, and so the Gwent was the initial inspiration, and it is where the idea. So as a brief sort of explanation of how the Devil's Lock card game works: you draw 7 cards, you place 4 of them face down, and then you individually flip and reveal them until you've revealed 3 cards, and then whoever has the most points at the end of that wins the first round. You both draw a card, you do the second round, and then it's best 2 out of 3. And the idea that I sort of took from Gwent was that 2 out of 3 rounds, where you want to not play all your best cards in the first round, because then you'll lose the second and third round. It's that sort of planning ahead. You have these set of 7 cards, which will be 8 or 9, that you will be using for the entire game, which I think is. It's fun, and it adds sort of a layer of strategy to it already. But then where it differs from Gwent, because Gwent is just a straight up like card game, this is a sort of game of information. If you really think about it, all of the card abilities are designed to be symmetrical, so that they can benefit your opponent as well as you. So, and the reason you place 4 cards down and only reveal 3 of them is because you want some sort of conditional, because you don't want to be flipping cards that benefit your opponent.
Yeah. You want to be able to respond to what's appearing on the board.
Yes.
And slightly adjust your game plan.
And so one aspect of the strategy of the game is being able to adjust your game plan based on what the opponent has, whilst knowing which order of things that you flip your cards in, so you can you can protect your cards from whatever your opponent's doing, but not reveal too much of your plan while still. There's that whole thing, and then another part of the strategy is like predicting what your opponent's going to do, because a lot of the cards have abilities that activate depending on what the opponent has. I think a really good example is Captain Marrow. He because you flip your cards at the same time as your opponent, his card reads, when this card is flipped, destroy the opponent's card if it's a support card, which is about a 50-50 chance. And you start to get into a rhythm of thinking, like, when is my opponent going to flip his support card? Is he someone who does it first? Usually people do it third or second. So you would start planning around that. But if because you play from the same deck, you as an opponent might be like, oh, my opponent could have this card, so I'm going to flip my support first to play around it. And then there's this whole like mind game aspect of when you flip your cards at different things, and entire games could be decided on that.
I'd say once you've played like a handful of games against the same person, because the games are very short, so usually if you're playing with someone, you'll play like 5 or 6 games, right? When you're playing, once you've played a few times, you kind of get a grasp of what order they like to do certain things in and what types of play they go for. So you can try and like work around that. So it really is like the mind game aspect comes in, and it's really fun trying to predict what they're going to do.
But there is also a level of luck and unpredictability. It's why it's called Devil's Luck. And that's always a lot of fun as well, because it sort of levels the playing field. Someone who's amazing at the card game will win more often than not. There is skill, but they will lose sometimes, and it means that it's still a fun game. And there's still these like, oh shit moments of like unpredictability and stuff. And it was really reassuring to me to find out that there is a skill aspect to this, because there are some people I have played this game against who are not very good at this game. And then there are some people who are really good at this game. And I think, I don't know, it's just, for essentially what is my first card game I have ever designed, for it to actually be fun it's made me very, very happy. And when we initially played it, it was like 20-something cards, and we were skiing. We were on a ski holiday, and they were all based off our own personal D&D series. And because it was so fun, we were like, I've got to actually make this into a thing. So I then like reflavored a bunch of the cards to be based on my One Piece D&D series, and then added a whole bunch of extra cards. Any card that you read that has like more than 5 lines of dialogue, or in the text box, more than 5 ruled text is a Shwabadi designed card. Definitely, like Jasper, or Jasper's the key one that you designed, where you like reveal the top cards of the deck.
Jasper,
and you get the
really
fighters, the opponent gets the supports.
The Long John Magnum as well. That was mine.
It was originally Vincent Stormglork.
Yeah.
Any of those, they're all yours. And you have a thing where you will come up with these crazy ideas, and then it's my responsibility to like make them balanced and work.
Yeah.
And
because none of my ideas like as I write them would ever work in a card game. They'd be so unbalanced.
You had some, like, looking back at some of our old ideas, some of them are so stupid. They're like so narrow. They're like a card. It's like you flip it, you destroy one of your other cards. This card gains its power and thing, and then blah de blah happens, and then this happens if this happens.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about?
It was like such a sequence of events.
Yeah.
I really was like in a Magic the Gathering mindset, I think, because I was thinking like how those card interactions
you
tend to
design
work.
cards in a. I think the reason we work well together is I can't remember if it's top down or bottom up, but you will go from flavor first and design a card based around that.
100%.
Whilst I will see what cards we have, and I'll be like, oh, we only a third of the deck does this, so we need to bump the numbers up on that, or like when creating the. Yeah, sorry.
Something that surprised me within that creation process, especially with the new card game that you're now making, is seeing how much maths there is.
Oh gosh!
Like we started coming up with ideas, for the Isekai D&D card game.
Yeah.
Was it our third attempt?
Third attempt is the current
third attempt.
One,
You know, you start listing off your ideas, and I'm like, okay, to make this work, so if there's 3 archetypes and then 3 that we need 10 of each to make a 45 card deck, blah, 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 and there needs to be 3, and I'm like, what is that? And you're like making like spreadsheets and shit. And I'm like,
it's the balance of the amount, especially because you guys are playing from the same deck, and it's the same with Devil's Luck. Devil's Luck, the exact same thing, the exact same amount of factions, and there's the. Each faction has a 3 power card. Each faction has a 2 power card with an effect and a 2 power card with nothing. A 1 power card that has a flip effect and a 1 power card that has a whatever effect. Like they all. It's all sort of spread
it has to be
evenly.
Like perfectly balanced and symmetrical is like the number one thing.
And I use this thing. I can't remember what it's called. It's like the hypo something calculator. It's actually a maths equation that's supposed to give you, like, if you have a population of people, what's the statistic chance that if you pull a random person from there, they have brown hair. Is what it's usually used for, but I use it for the population as the deck of cards, and I pull 7 cards, and what is the statistic chance? And I always want it. So for removal is the really key thing in Devil's Luck. There is, I think, like an 80% chance that in the opening hand, one player at least has a removal card. And that's important. There should always be at least one removal card in somebody's hand in the game, because people need to know think that that's a thing that exists and play around, right? And so when I introduced the expansion cards, I had to introduce more removal pieces to like balance out that amount. So we introduced like the Scourge and like other things like that too. And there is a crazy amount of maths that has to be done.
You've got to keep the ratio of everything consistent. Even like when you do the expansion pack, you need to add cards, but keep the ratio of everything exactly the same, which is like so crazy to start thinking about when you're actually coming up with stuff.
With the original base set, there was enough 8 Flames members to have 9 Flames cards for the set. But when I was making the expansion pack, I was like, well, one of the factions is the Flames, and there's no more Flames characters. So in One Piece D&D, I introduced new Flames characters, so the Devil's Luck card game would be more balanced.
Did you actually?
Genuinely,
that's so funny.
And it like made sense because like a lot of them had died, so that they bring new members in. Like I think. Originally, I think people thought they'd maybe disbanded, but I had them like add more members, and I reintroduced them into the plot so that they were major enough to warrant a card in the card game, so that I could balance the card game.
Dude. Oh my God.
Olaf, Tempest, and Scourge, which are 3 cards in the expansion, are purely invented so that they could balance the card game.
This is Hasbro making a cartoon to sell toys.
Yeah. It genuinely is.
You invented these characters to make cards of them.
Yeah,
that's fucking hilarious. I do remember like when we were on the plane talking about the Isekai card game. We were trying to come up with cards, and you were doing all the maths, and I was like, what if there's this faction, this faction, this faction in the Isekai card game? And I'm like, oh, what if you add the gods? And I remember you just sighing and being like, there's not the same amount of numbers. That is one thing that I did though, is I forced you to make that aspect of the game non-symmetrical, but it works out because you made it work.
Let's talk about Vestoria, the Isekai card game, because this is the second card game, And being the second card game, it didn't come around quite as easily as Devil's Luck. The actual version, which I'm now, it's in proper production now. The Isekai, you've heard it here, the Isekai D&D card game, which will be named Vestoria, which is the name of the world, is in proper production, and it will be, I don't know, it'll be out this year, but I'm finding artists for it now. The card frames are coming along. Pretty much all the cards are actually designed.
It'll be out this year? Oh, bro, I'm so excited now.
Yeah, hopefully. That's what I'm aiming for.
Yeah.
For this year release of it. Because I've done enough playtesting to know that this is a fun game and it works well. But it was a long road. So the first version of the Isekai card game was like really weird. So it was a game where each character gave you resources. So you played the character and he'd give you resources. And then you drew like ability cards for an ability deck. And then you would play them to destroy your opponent's characters. And then there was also like cards that would like protect your characters. And there was cards that let you draw more cards. And it was fun. It was fun enough, but it had some glaring issues. One of the first issues was often people would just have like 12 cards in hand because they couldn't play any of their cards because they didn't have the right combination of like character abilities and stuff, like the resources. And so every turn would be them not playing anything and they'd just keep drawing. And then it wasn't fun and it wasn't fast. That's the second problem. It just wasn't quick at all. The games went ages. And then third problem, it just didn't have any character to it. And then I think you said it was slightly similar to... At that point, I hadn't really played Pokemon. And you said it was slightly similar to Pokemon in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It was like...
And I was like, this sucks. I hate this. Fuck this.
Yeah.
Second version. We wanted to make a game. At this point, I'd been playing a lot of games like Seven Wonders Duel and Splendor and stuff, which are like resource management. Like you get resources to be able to do things, and that's fun. And I thought that would work for Isekai because it's like the Otherworldly Brewery. You're like setting stuff up, etc., etc. And
the theming of the second version of the game was top. I loved it.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that and see if we could do that with only cards, without any pieces or board games. Because again, the brief is it should only work as a card game. You don't need any external things.
You just have a deck of cards and that's all you need.
And the whole game functioned where you'd have 3 locations and they all would have a requirement. You have cards in your hand that had abilities, and they'd also have like the resources they would give to get the locations. You'd place a card on a location, your opponent would place a card, and you would claim a location, you would get the resources from that location, and it would further help you get later locations or win the game. You either win the game by getting 3 towers or 5 breweries or something.
Yeah, like the whole point of the game was like you're claiming these locations, you're going from place to place, using your character to claim that location, and then it either gives you like, was it influence?
Yeah.
Influence or brew.
Yeah.
And like I love that because of the theming, in game, either the character's goal is to stay in Vestoria and just make a bunch of money with the Otherworldly Brewery, or to get the towers and try and escape. So it was like...
Yeah. It's cool theming-wise. The problem was, the games were really long. Like, really long. They ended up going for hours. Just like singular rounds of the game was so long. Secondly, so much mental maths. You had to keep track of a lot of stuff, and we would keep forgetting things. Like you'd get to the point where you're constantly having to redo the maths of how many points you are away on each location and how many resources are going to help you with certain things. And it got to the point where it's just like it was like accounting the game. Like it didn't feel like, I knew the game didn't work when people didn't want to play it besides us. The thing about Devil's Luck is everybody wanted to play it, right? Connor Quest wanted to play Devil's Luck. He enjoyed it. He did not want to play the Isekai card game, the second version, which we'll coin, I guess, Otherworldly Brewery. And most people there were people I played it with once, and then they were hesitant to play it again because it was just an exhausting experience.
Yeah, it was a lot.
And we were trying to think of workarounds around it, and then one day we were walking back from Greg's, and I said to Mark, let's just make a new one, a different card game. And we couldn't think of how the game would work, but you thought of the idea of you have to draft your team, right?
Party, essentially,
and at that point, you were like, drafting it to your hand to play later. But so we were like, we still don't have a game. You just have an alternate way of drawing. But then I was like, well, but wait a second. What if the game is the drafting? And the new version of Astoria started to come forwards and shape. And now the game is a lot simpler, but it's a lot of fun. The game is, you'll have a random location, one location. It'll have an ability and a point number that you're trying to get to. Each player, there is a pool of 4 character cards in the center, and they are all worth a singular influence point. We did away with the 3 different resources all the other ones had in the column. Just 1 point. And they also all have abilities or whatever. And on your turn, you draft one into your character. Yeah, like you draft it, and then another card is replaced into the pool from the top of the deck, and then the other person drafts a card. So simple, just as a base rule. The player who gets to
the actual
that
flow
number,
of gameplay
is so fast, it's so simple. The player who gets to that number first wins, right? But the funness comes in all of the cards. There's cards that move cards around. There's cards that destroy cards. There's cards that boost other cards. There's cards that do things with the top of the deck. There's cards that do things with the graveyard. There's cards that do things with the location. There's
cards that have effects if they're in the draft, but not when you've drafted them. It's like
and then the locations themselves have different effects and abilities that make the games more interesting. And I've play tested this now with you, with Briggs, with Spooky, with a few other people, and everybody has enjoyed it. It's really, it's actually honestly easier to teach than Devil's Luck, and but has more strategy and complexity than Devil's Luck. Like it's got a lower floor but a higher ceiling, and there is an aspect of luck still, but there's a lot of strategy in it, and it's genuinely so much fun. And I'm just, because you're coming up here in a week, right? You're coming to my house in a week. I'm so excited just to play test it again when you come up. That's how good this game is. Before you took your flight, you came to my house and we played it for like 3 hours straight, like before your flight. And it generally so much. There were so many moments where like there will be like a singular card that will decide it, and you turn a card over, and it's like this big dramatic moment. And what I love about it is some games are really quick, some games are decently long, but there's like a nice balance of the two. And the long games...
I think on average it is longer than Devil's Luck games.
The games are longer than Devil's Luck, but they're way shorter than the other Isekai games.
Holy shit.
And genuinely... It's to a point where there's enough quick games that when the long games happen, they feel fun because they feel intense. It's like in Magic the Gathering, where you have a decent amount of quick games, and then that long game will feel more intense because of that balance. If every game was super long, it'd be like tedious to always play. But the variety is really fun, and I
love it. I'm so excited. It's so satisfying to have gone through the design process and have 2 basically entire games scrapped. And finally land on something where you play and you're like, no, this is incredible. This is fun.
I look forward for people to play it and enjoy it. Gosh, I also am just realizing that I forgot to change my OBS settings from when we did Isekai D&D, so we are not being recorded to 2 tracks. So I apologize to anybody listening to this, and the audio isn't as balanced as it may usually be.
I hope it's good enough.
I hope it's okay. And Mark, I think we should wrap it up now.
Just under an hour now, right? So.
I mean, we're trying to keep them short. We want to do 30-minute episodes.
We just keep getting carried away. We have too much to talk about. We have too much shit to say.
All
right. Look forward to the Isekai D&D card game, and make sure if you haven't played Devil's Luck, it's pretty cheap. How much is it on the site?
It's like $20, 60 quid. The expansion's 10. But if you get the 2 together, there's a $5 discount code called Devil's Luck, so you can get Devil's Luck plus the expansion together for like 25 quid, and it's really
like, I know I feel like I'm just like fucking advertising this thing, but you won't find almost any like 2-player board games that are that cheap and that fun. I promise you. Most 2-player board games are going to be like $40 minimum.
And they'll have all these extra pieces, or there'll be like a bluffing.
All these extra pieces, and then you can't travel with them very well.
It just fits in your pocket.
You don't get it. I have 2 copies of Devil's Luck card game. I take them everywhere.
Well,
right.
anyway, I also want to say quickly thank you everyone for your support. I appreciate all of the reviews and rating. We are 5 stars on Spotify. Everyone's rated it 5 stars, which is great. You know what? The down the hobby hole reviews, and I'm gonna read a couple reviews right now.
Give a shout out.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it.
That's what we do at the end of our show. We shout out someone who left a review on Spotify.
Okay. I'll pick. All right, here we go. This is from Taxorix, 1895, so he's really old. T-Rex, sorry. Fun duo. Rustage and Schwab just have fun talking with each other. For topics, definitely share the show you are watching and what you would want in the future in both nerd culture and rap world. That sentence really ran away with itself, but I really appreciate it. He's from 1895, so that's how they spoke back then.
Yeah.
This one's good. This one's by And Hee. That's a good name. Fun time. Long time Rustage podcast enjoyer. This brings the same Rustage charm without the semi-frequent panics of the D&D podcast. Shwabadi is also a great co-host, bringing things into focus when things get mildly off topic. He ain't just a wingman, though. He's got some great dry humor in his own right. Hope this goes for as long as you've got hobbies. Get in here, new listeners. Thank you.
Well, there you go. That's brilliant. Yeah, I do feel like my job is to rein you in sometimes.
Yeah.
Pull you back.
Yeah. Stop me from being successful.
Yeah. Keep you grounded.
Keep me grounded. Neg me. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Say a mean thing about me right now.
Oh.
Yeah. I bet you can't. I bet you can. I mean, do it. I'm ready. I got it.
I don't want to anymore.
I'm ready.
Honest, I didn't want to anywhere.
I can take anything you've got. Anything.
Oh.
I'm so ready. I've never been more ready for anything in my life.
I can't even think. Thank you so much for joining us down the hobby hole this week.
No, I'm gonna explode if you don't say something mean to me right now. I need it.
Please leave a review. We'll shout you out, and we'll catch you in another episode.